The next item on the agenda is action on the agenda. Dr. Scheiger, are there any changes to the
There
agenda?
are no changes to tonight's agenda.
Okay. No changes. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Oh, sorry. Motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes.
Okay.
Agenda as presented.
Okay.
A second.
Okay, we have a motion by Diamond and a second by Don. All those in favor of keeping the agenda as published, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? So moved. Action on the minutes, and those minutes would be from the July 16th meeting.
I make a motion to approve the minutes of the meeting held on July 16th as presented.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Don and a second by Karen and Diamond. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, so moved, thank you. Action on the vouchers, Mr. Pierce.
I make a motion to approve vouchers totaling $1,409,068.81 as presented.
Second that motion?
Okay, a motion was made by Mike and second by Mr. Martin to accept vouchers as presented. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? So moved. Public participation. We have one person, Lance Spenna, and the agenda item is number 4. Is there any specific one under number 4, or?
Well, actually, after looking through what's in there.
Just a reminder, you have a 3-minute time limit.
First off, the prioritize facility needs list, which is in the packet, is just an expanded version of the earlier FAC committee's $150 million wish list. The real needs are greatly overshadowed by the ever-growing wants list. Also at the very top is a strategic objective, which is just another one of the many mission statements that continues to be hypnotically repeated on documents and at the start of many strategic planning committee meetings. One important item is always omitted from these mission statements, and that is acknowledgement of who the board really works for, which is the taxpayer. At the top of the draft facility planning timeline, you will also notice PRA and JP Cullen's logos. The board does not work for those companies, it works for the taxpayer. The board's purpose is to oversee a public institution that receives tax money from the public. If they do not work for the public with transparency and fiscal responsibility, then we have what's called taxation without representation. I would like this board to remember the survey company's findings after the results were tallied. They tried to explain what the taxpayers really want and what they are willing to pay for. I would also like this board to remember the taxpayer's voice. 2 failed referendums and a failed approval of purchasing Old Bowling Alley. So it seems the survey company was right. No means no. And I ask, going forward, ask yourselves, who do you work for? Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Lance. Moving on to section 2, presentations. The first one is PBIS update. Mrs. Kramer?
All right, good evening. Just for those of you that might not know what PBIS stands for, it's Positive Behavioral Intervention and Supports. All of our schools in the school district of Milton participate in this program. It ties to our strategic plan, being the objective being relationships, climate, and culture. It says we will promote a healthy culture that fosters a safe and caring learning environment for all. Ways in which the district supports PBIS in each of our schools would be through some federal funding dollars for training and implementation. We have monthly building team meetings that are led by our Student Services Department, and then we have members of each faculty on that. Also continued district focus on social-emotional learning through professional development. So a lot of our professional development over the last couple of years is tied to the social-emotional learning of our students. So that's the continued support the district provides. In your handout that you received, just a quick review that each of the schools have, different words that they quote unquote live by. And we've talked about those in the past here at the board meetings, but we're continuing to look at those and make sure that they're relevant to what we're doing each and every day. It's not another thing, but just something that we do throughout the day in our schools. Just some highlights from 2017-18. The district's focus was on family engagement. And so ways in which we have done that, for example, at the K-3, we provided an internet safety presentation out at Harmony. All K-3 families were invited. 4 through 6 dabbled in some movie nights and some guidance. The guidance department had put on some open sessions for families to join. New this year at the middle school, they had bingo and movie nights. And then at the high school, postcards to families, highlighting some positive things that they were seeing with all kids, 9 through 12. So those are just a few highlights. And then just a review of why we do PBIS. We know that people are comfortable working together and feel safe in their environment. Their productivity increases. Research tells us that academic scores increase 11% by creating a safe, compassionate classroom for learners. So just in review, we know that PBIS promotes positive culture and climate in our schools, and we as a district will continue those efforts each and every day so that our students experience that. Is there any questions that you might have in regards to PBIS? Gordon? Bueller? Just kidding.
Anyone?
Oh, you've seen it? Good.
Yeah, once or twice. Okay, very good, thank you, Mr.
Yep.
Stewart. Next on the agenda is section 3, which is the technology committee report. Don?
Yeah, I asked Ed Snow, who's our technology department head, to give Karen and I and Brian an update on how the technology department works, what jobs each people are doing, what our budget is, and to give us an overview of everything that is done in the district. And so Ed gave us about a 45-minute presentation that outlined the vision of the department and how the department is structured and how we utilize the personnel that we have. So that's what.
Okay. Any questions for Don about that particular item, the technology department vision for the future? Anything else?
Nope, that's it.
Okay, thank you. Next item is item number 4, the Strategic Planning Committee report. The committee chair, Brian Koppel, is not here this evening, so Karen is going to report out.
Thank God Brian sent me an email, because it's long, on stuff that we've been working on. So the Strategic Planning Committee has met twice since the last board meeting. We met on July 26th and August 9th, excuse me. We did participate in a brief tour of the high school pool and the work in progress in the special education area in the lower level of the high school, which encompasses the ADA bathrooms, showers in the classrooms. We also discussed whether we needed or wanted to go to referendum in the fall of 18 or wait until the spring of 19. District administration presented a prioritized ranking of schools with the greatest facility improvement needs. In addition, PRA and JP Cullen presented 2 options to meet the prioritized rankings with a sample facilities budget. We were also given an opportunity to submit questions to the administration, PRA and JP Cullen, with regard to the 2 options presented. The combined committee submitted 24 questions, which were handled by Tim on the August 9th board meeting. We also were presented with a sample timeline and some milestones on a schedule that was presented to us as a proposed recommendation. And then finally, we reviewed the performance of PRA. Based on the content and discussion within these 2 strategic planning committee meetings, the committee makes the following recommendations. Number 1, PRA should continue as the architect for the School District of Milton's facilities improvement projects. The district should wait until spring of 2019 to go to referendum in order to give the board and district administration time to propose an acceptable solution to the community. Any solution proposed for the spring 2019 referendum should include a new pool. District administration should begin immediately to collaborate with private groups and citizens to collect donations and private funds for the pool. A new high school option should be added to the 2 current renovation options, resulting in 3 total options for the committee to consider as a solution for the referendum. And the board should approve the sample timeline and milestone schedule presented at the last committee meeting.
Okay. I would like to add that there aren't just 3 options. Right now, there's 3 listed. The recommendation is not one of the 3 necessarily. It could be a combination of any of the 3, all of the 3, or ones that we haven't even been aware of yet. So, and again, the recommendation is not to the board for any type of action tonight. It was just the wording he chose to use to report it out. Anyone else have any comments about the strategic plan process, where we're at? Okay, as long as we talked a little bit about the timeline, I think you all received the timeline in your packet. I believe the only change from the one that was given out the evening of the strategic plan meeting is the August 27th date, the Board of Education meeting. The date was incorrect. For those of you that may not have seen it, there are 2 opportunities to participate in the Public Facilities Planning Workshop. The dates have not been set firm yet, but it probably will be the first week in October and another one in the first week of November. So for people that have potential ideas, plans, solutions, district-wide solutions, you'll be able to bring those forward and explain them. We had discussion on whether or not people that had plans should bring them to a board member and present them, and it was decided that it would be better if whoever has the plans bring them and present them themselves. That way there's no bias in one way or the other of who's ever presenting it. So we look forward to that, to see what type of potential solutions that we have not seen yet that are out there.
Tom?
Yes.
Real quick. With that timeline, didn't know if you wanted those, like the November one moved up, if the timeline is okay with the October, November, if you wanted community input sooner, we could take that November one and move it into September. Again, not knowing what your wishes are. Again, that's very valuable within the SP, the Strategic Plan Committee stuff, but if you wish, we could move that one up into September if you wish to get input sooner than the first week of October or whatever.
Any comments from the board?
I think it'd be better to move it up because it would give us more time to consider different options. If we wait till November, it seems like it'd be awful rushed. And this way here the community would have more time to digest it as well.
So maybe have one in September and then the
Take the
second one in
November one out
October.
and put it in September.
I agree with Don.
If we have the annual meeting on the 24th of September, but we could have the strategic planning committee maybe on the 18th or so that way, again, it gives time for us to, if the board wishes to investigate further some of the ideas from the community, it gives us some time to do that and vet through it. Obviously, we have the annual meeting coming up within a week later, but in wanting to make sure that we're responsive to the community, it might be good to move the November one up. Keep the October one, but maybe flip the November one into September.
Thanks, good idea.
In saying that, do you think everybody in the community knows that we're taking input from them by now, or should we?
Well, we would obviously communicate that out
Yeah.
and let them know the dates. And more than anything, I think what we talked about last week is that if the community member has ideas, we want the ideas to come from that person or a group of people, so that way there's no translation or interpretation deficiency there. We'll just communicate out that there's an opportunity for you to bring your ideas forward. There's no commitment by the board, moving forward with that idea or ideas, but when we're looking at it, what's out there? And we hear lots of potential ideas, but here's the opportunity for people to come. And there's a couple opportunities. And obviously people can send things, but it's hard to sometimes translate what specifically in. Depending on what the ideas are, there might be some opportunity to incorporate what some of the ideas that community members have, and adding on what we've talked about a little bit with previous either options or renovation options, or again, it's just an opportunity for us to listen and then see what direction you want. If there's some ideas that you want PRA and Colin and myself to work on, then I'd rather have that direction come from the board than come from the community, because we're obviously going to be using district resources then to follow up on those.
Just a suggestion in regards to that. What if, because right now we kind of have September 12th slated as that publicizing that invitation to participate in the workshops. What if we make that the workshop day and then do the publicizing either the week of August 27th or September 6th? Because my thought behind that is if we do it on the 12th, that gives us as a board and as the committee to kind of digest that information, and then we would have that annual meeting on the 24th and then follow up with a second one in that October date.
I would think we should put it out though to the public as soon as, sooner of the 2 days if possible, so that gives people time that maybe has started a plan or started some plans, or if they still need time to create something, if they want to be part of it. Ample time, because if we're only giving them a week, the week before, that might be difficult.
We can definitely publicize it this week and every week. The 23rd, that's the next strategic plan. We may want to do there is talk about the potential format. Now, that it wouldn't change anyone's mindset as far as their plans or ideas, but just how you want to discuss how to have the input, what types of presentations or whatever format.
Joe?
I think likewise.
Okay.
Sooner we get it out, the more input we can get.
Okay, I think that September 12th is probably a good date to have the first one. If you can work with JP Cullen and PRA to make sure that's doable soon as possible, and then get the set in stone, and then also maybe set a date in October, because right now we don't have a date would be the second one.
Correct.
Set a date for that one as well, and we'll get that out as often as we can. And for those of you in the audience, if you know of someone that has some potential solutions, let them know that they'll have a couple opportunities to bring forward.
Sounds good. I will we'll update the timeline, send it out to you, publicize it the September 12th, and then the rest of the items, and then perhaps I'll maybe send a couple of dates your way that just respond to me that work in October, and then we can look at getting that in the timeline as well this week. Okay?
Okay. Any other comments? from the strategic plan committee?
I think we should approve the timeline, but I don't know if it's on the agenda to approve it.
I think so.
We have to make sure it's okay with the PRA and Cullinan.
No, I'm talking about this timeline calendar, because it's a flexible calendar. I mean, it's basically telling people we're got a timeline. But
Well, it's not on the agenda for action, so we'll have to do that next
don't worry
time.
about it.
Once we get the updates in there, are you good with us keeping that on the website and directing people towards that and keeping that front and center? We'll obviously push it out through media, etc., but we'll keep that as a running thing on our website as well, so people can go right there and find it.
Absolutely.
That's an awesome idea.
Okay. Thank you, Karen. Number 5, Human Resources Committee. The Human Resources Committee met on Friday, August 3rd. We had 3 items on the agenda, and they were just updates and informational. The first one was an update on the teachers on call. Chris, why don't you just step in and kind of tell everyone the training that's been involved and all the other things pertaining to the teachers on call.
Okay, the first item that we had talked about was the Teachers on Call update. We as HR and payroll have been making updates to the ASOP system, which is absence management that takes care of all behind the scenes items for teachers signing up with any kind of absence, or substitutes signing up for any absences for teachers or aides. So we've been, for the last couple of months, have been working on behind the scenes work. And actually today in the PDC, we had a training almost all day long, starting at 8 a.m. till noon for the substitutes. And then at that same time, we had a training upstairs with teachers on call and the administrative assistants. And then we had brought the substitutes back in the afternoon to have them talk with teachers on call and answer any kind of questions that they may have. And then after that, we had our technology department in the back, and they were available to answer questions about any kind of technology that the subs may encounter in any given day. So they were able to work on the smart board in the back. They were able to look at iPads and laptops. So that's what happened today.
What was the reaction to the subs about when they heard that we were going to go on teachers on call?
So far, it's been totally positive. The concerns that came up were more, what does this mean? How does this impact me? There's nothing about that I've heard that says, please do not do teachers on call. Please do not go down that route. It's, what does my Wisconsin retirement look like? What do the health insurance benefits look like with teachers on call? Things like that. Those are the issues that have come up.
And just as a reminder, a lot of the school districts in the area use teachers on call.
Yes, they're starting to migrate towards them. More in the Dane County area. They started to put teachers on call. See a lot of Milton, Cross Plains, Coral, North Grove. Then down closer towards Rock County, we had Whitewater sign up this year, sign up last year. And then we also, with Milton and Jefferson, are the ones that are in our area.
How was the attendance today for the training?
For the first part of the meeting, we had all day long. But the first part was about 25 people showed up. And on the second part of the day, we had probably more, probably closer to 27, 28, that wanted to get the hands on the technology, talk with teachers on call. They would finish up any online requirements that teachers on call had. So it was very, in my opinion, well attended for it being an optional day.
Okay. Any other questions about the teachers on call? The second item was an update on biometric testing. You want to give just a brief history on that, Chris, and then where we're at today?
Absolutely. So with the biometric testing, that is scheduled for August 16th and August 17th. It's going to be in this room. We're going to have Dean come on the front part of the PDC and Mercy on the back side. And we'll put up the divider here. And then we're also having some curtains and privacy curtains coming in so that each of the screeners that are coming in from Dean and Mercy will be able to meet with those employees that would like to have those biometric testing screenings done. So what that means is nurses from Dean, nurses from Mercy will come, and then they'll administer the screening process, which means glucose levels, height, weight. They talk about BMI. It turns out to be about a 15-minute process, and then they give the results to the employee. The school district of Milton never gets those results, so we have no idea. We just know who shows up to participate. And strictly voluntary. There's nothing that we're requiring it of employees, so they're able to come either on the 16th or 17th. We do ask that they go through the process and sign up for it, so we know how many screeners they have.
What kind of a participation rate have you gotten so far?
So far for Dean, we are looking at about 50, maybe 54. And on Mercy, it's a little bit less. We're about 20, 23.
Okay.
And we're finding that there's a few schedule clashes with end of the year trips and things like that employees are still on. And there's a few other functions in the district that are also going on, like the mentor partner trainings that are happening on the 16th and 17th as well.
So the employees that miss these dates, they can still do it with their private position?
That is correct, yes. We will not have any other training or any other screenings on site, but they're able to still do that through their doctor. And if they do it before December 31st, then they can do that in the next year. So it resets every year, every calendar year.
Okay. Any questions about biometric testing? I think it's a win-win situation. It's good for the employees, and it's also good for the district as well. Hopefully it would reduce our premiums and save us all money down the road.
Yep, the more they know.
Yep. The third one was the update on sexual harassment training.
Yes, we are. This is the first annual training that we are doing for our district. It's going to be for all employees. We're expecting about 462 employees on August 28th. We're going to be holding that at the high school library, and there's going to be 5 rotations. EMC Insurance Company is our liability and workers' comp carrier, so they're going to be coming in to present. So they'll have a presenter. I'll be there to also help with the facilitation, but it's going to be more of a training. It's going to last about 40 minutes long in 5 different groups. And we're hoping in the future to add on additional trainings, whether it's in the same year or next year we may pick out a different topic.
Okay. Now this isn't anything that is state directed or DPI directed. Is this something we're doing on our own?
Correct.
Okay, any questions on the sexual harassment training? Okay, thank you, Chris. The second item was we went into executive session in compliance with state statutes 19.85 and 1 front C, front F, and it just talked about administrative contracts, equal rights division discrimination, and district organizational chart. So if there aren't any other questions, that concludes my report from the Human Resource Committee. The next item, number 6, was the policy committee that took place earlier this evening. Joe.
Yeah, as indicated, our policy committee is myself and Mike and Brian. Brian's absent tonight, but we still had another chunk of work looked at, and here again the heavy lifting is done by the administrative team that delves into these policies, and in our ongoing effort to get ourselves updated with all these policies, several of them, a couple have been approved. We have a chunk of them tonight that this will stand as their second reading, and we're going to recommend adoption of those. We've got a document here that they kind of color coded for us, and I think for accuracy, I'll quickly read the policy numbers, and then this serve as our second reading. and we're going to recommend adoption of those. We'll have a second batch, if you will, that we'll consider tonight the first reading of. And just to summarize, you know, they cover a wide variety of topics, but in general, these are language changes. Quite often there are policies in, let's say, administration versus staff versus support staff. So we're making the language consistent from one policy to the other across different areas that they affect. Like I said, some of them are semantic. I think in all the policies it used to say Board of Education, and we're striking of education. So that's one potential change, if you will. So they're very, very inconsequential. In some cases, we've not delved into any yet to change any procedure we do, any policy that we've already been doing. So far the work is basically to make them consistent and to update language that would also be consistent with either state statute or other guidelines given to us. So policies 100, 131.1, 144.1, 151.2, 155, 164.1, 164.2, 2260.02, 2261.01, 2370, 3217, 4217, 5130, 5310.01, 5330, 5517, 5540, 5771, 5772, 7430, 8146, 8310, 8350, 8452, and 9140. I apologize for the length of that, but those were read previously as a first reading. Tonight will serve as their second, and we are recommending adoption of those policies as amended, and I will make that movement.
I'll second it.
Okay, motion is made by Joe and seconded by Mike to accept the second reading of the policies that were just dictated. Any questions? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, so moved. And the second part,
And
Joe?
to piggyback on that, we have maybe a smaller list here that this will serve as the first reading, and likewise they have some small changes here and there with grammar and semantics, but one policy number is 152, 166, 1210, 2411, 2430, 2431, 5111, 5610, 5830, 6605, 8309, 8330, 8800, 9130, 9211, and 9700 have been vetted by our administrative folks, and we all felt like change nothing of how we do business, so we are comfortable with what they're recommending there, and we'll want to read those for their first reading tonight and subsequently adopt those, I believe, at our did we say next meeting or skip the meeting?
Next meeting, I believe.
September meeting, so.
No, we're going to adopt these, but there won't be any new ones for the
Okay.
first reading.
So our next board meeting, we'll probably adopt these, and we won't have another new batch until 4 weeks from now. That would be the recommendation.
And the policies that we reviewed tonight, again, are in that Google Doc that you've seen.
Right.
So you can go through there and look at the actual policy and then the recommended changes through Neola and from administration.
Okay. The policy updates are an ongoing thing, and with us just going to Neola, it just kind of probably added a few more changes, but it's something that has to be done. So again, commend the staff that has spent a lot of time going over these and making recommendations. Thank you, Joe. The next item is new business, and it's discussion and possible action on Children's at-Risk Report and Support Plan. Susan Probst.
This is an annual statutory requirement report to the board. At risk, we're looking at students who are at risk of dropping out. And on that first page, it gives you the criteria that the state give us that we need to look at. This report is 11 pages long. I have no intention of reading the entire report to you. I want to highlight a few things, and I will tell you the page number that I'm on when I'm highlighting them, but please feel free to stop me if you have questions that I don't cover. On page 2, it starts to list the number of students that meet each of the single criteria. Dropout is the one criteria that if they drop out of school, they are obviously at risk of dropping out. All of the other criteria, they have to meet 2 pieces of criteria to be considered dropouts. The second component is the credit requirement. So that's for students who are more than a year behind. So that's why you see 0 for freshmen, because you can't be a year behind in credits as a freshman. Grade level benchmarks, that is the STAR. We give the STAR screener in math and in reading 3 times a year, spring, summer, and fall. We use the spring assessment to determine if the student is 2 grade levels behind. We have benchmarks set for each grade level. So a student in 6th grade would be having a difficult time meeting the benchmark for a 4th grade. Note that the state requirement is 5th through 12th grade, but we already start looking at this in 3rd grade because we know if a student is having a difficult time reading in 3rd grade, that's a pretty good indicator that they're going to struggle in school from that point on. On page 3, you see habitual truants. You also see students as parents, the adjudicated delinquents, and you also have the 8th grade below in core areas. Please note that students who struggle in math oftentimes also struggle in science, and students who struggle with reading often struggle with social studies as well. On page 4 is where you're going to find the chart that shows the number of students who qualified in 2 or more areas. So these are the students that are identified as students as risk. One highlight on there, notice that 8th grade is the grade that has the most indicators. So we would expect that number to be higher. So for instance, a student could qualify on the STAR reading, saying that their reading was 2 grade levels behind, but they could also qualify on the Wisconsin Forward in reading. So that we would expect that number to be higher. Please don't hear me say that we're using that as an excuse, because the middle school takes this pretty seriously and they've got some exciting plans for next year to bring that number down. If you look on page 5, the very top chart is going to give you the number of students who qualified in the last 3 years. And if you'll note, there's a lot of things to celebrate there. The STAR reading and the STAR math, we have a lot fewer students who qualified as at risk this year than we had in the previous 2 years. Also notice that our truancy scores are much lower as well. That was a focus last year in all of the buildings, is how do we get kids to school? We know that if they're missing school, they can't be learning. And our multiple factor total was also lower. The one score that was higher that we have control of is the middle school, the 8th grade below basic. And again, I've got some things to share with you on some of the promising practices that they're planning on putting into place. The grade level benchmarks, that gives you kind of a 3-year snapshot of a grade level. So for instance, 2020, that is our 11th grade class this year. And you can see the number of kids who have qualified each year with that benchmark. This document is showing with the principals, but there's a spreadsheet that goes with it that includes every student's name who is indicated on here. And that spreadsheet is used with the student services team and the building team so that teachers can plan to wrap around these kids and find interventions that will hopefully help them be successful. The last chart on page 5 is the number of students who qualified 2 years in a row. So a student might qualify in 8th grade, but they might not qualify as at risk in 9th grade. They might qualify in 2 years in a row. We want to make sure that those students get the attention that they need, so hopefully they graduate. The remaining pages are different interventions and practices that are either have been in place for a while or we've ramped up. I want to touch on just a couple of them because there's a couple of new things there. The Milton Wired is on page 6, and this is a new 18-19 school year program that's blended at the high school or with a MECA student where they can do some online work. On the next page, there's special education. As you can imagine, the number of students with disabilities has a higher number of students on this at-risk report. In some ways, we'll acknowledge that because obviously if they have a disability and an IEP, they have an IEP for a reason. They're behind in their disability is interfering with them to be able to learn. But that doesn't allow us to sit back and accept it. And so the special ed team has worked diligently in the last 2 years, and I I have to also emphasize the work that general ed is doing in making sure that the foundational skills in the universal is in place, but that will continue to be a focus of ours. Middle school math instruction, they have a change in schedule for next year. The math will actually be 84 minutes, which is about double to what they had last year. They have a higher number of students who are identified with math, and so now they're meeting fidelity of the curriculum. So hopefully we'll see some really good results from that intervention, that support. I'm going to jump all the way to page 10. There'll be some changes in instructional coaching. Our C&I director and our instructional tech will be working much more closely to support our coaches and our interventionists so that the support's given to our teachers on how to use technology and the instructional strategies can be implemented with fidelity. And then on the last page, we'll also have a new mentor program. The new mentor program will support our new teachers in the district. And then we have an early learning project where we're reaching out to families from birth until 3, with children birth until 3, so we can hopefully help facilitate some of the resources we have in the district with young families so that students have an opportunity to learn before they get here. This was not intended to be an all-inclusive of all the supports that are in place for students, just kind of highlighting some of them that we're maybe a little more proud of. The first step to helping these students is to identify them and to let the staff know who are working with them that this is a student at risk, and then start channeling those resources to be able to support them. Any questions you have on this report?
The 8th grade, on page 4 with the 8th grade, the number of students with 2 more indicated 59. Is that, you know, in the 7th grade we have 6, in 8th grade we have 59. Is it just a class?
No, it's because there's more chances for them to be identified. So in 6th grade, we only look at the STAR reading, the STAR math, and truancy. So a student could be a really weak reader, but be good in math and come to school, so they wouldn't qualify. Whereas in 8th grade, they have now more opportunities to qualify for the at-risk report. So again, the example of they could qualify with the STAR reader, so that's our screener, and then they could also qualify as on the Wisconsin Forward, the state exam, in reading. And the same thing could happen in math. Instead of just 3 ways to get in, these guys have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 different ways to get in.
So a lot more
Right.
factors playing in.
Yeah.
Okay.
We would always expect 8th grade to be the highest because of the multiple factors. It doesn't mean that we don't want to dig in and look at each and every one of those students and those cases. It was interesting when Matt and I were chatting about how some of the kids qualified or met the benchmark of being at risk with the STAR reader, but not on the Wisconsin Forward. You would assume it would be much easier to qualify with the Wisconsin Forward, much more rigorous exam than our STAR. So sometimes it is student, I don't want to say motivation because I don't want to say they're not motivated to be assessed, but we have to take that into consideration as well. So that middle school team will look at every single student that's identified and then come up with a plan on how to move forward. And it might be as simple as connecting with that student. So they might take the connectedness survey and look at the results on that last year, and it could indicate that that student really didn't feel connected to school. Well, that's an easy fix. We need to find an adult that they can relate to.
Okay, thank you. And then with the 12th grade, ones that failed to graduate and dropped out, do we know where they went, or do we know what happens to them? Do we get any follow-up?
Yeah, so we have 3 that are re-enrolling for a 5th year, 2 that are just don't want anything to do with it. Yeah, and all of them had some form of alternative education in high school.
Okay, thank you.
Tara, the ones, have any stated that they would do the GED or anything like that, or they're just done with education?
One of the 2 that is not coming back did state that he had interest in that. I don't know if he followed through on that yet or not.
Okay.
Usually they'll come back and let us know at some point, but the 3 that have re-enrolled, I'm figured it out and they want their home.
Okay. Any other questions for Susan? Thank you. Your department sure has put a lot of work into identifying and then coming up with solutions to help these kids. So I appreciate all your work.
Team effort on the administrator's part. They get a lot of help during the summertime compiling this information, and I enjoy analyzing it. I think they enjoy it too. And come up with a plan to move forward. So thank you. This does need to be acted upon.
Okay, thank you. The next item under new business is just... Oh, I'm sorry.
I'll move to approve the Children at Risk report and support plan as presented.
I'll second.
Motion is made by Joe and seconded by Don to accept the Children at Risk report as presented. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, so moved. Thank you, Mr. Martin. Item B, direction and possible action on School District of Milton's strategic plan. As you know, we were presented with a new, easier to follow, less than 19-page strategic plan a couple, 2 or 3 months ago now. There has been some revisions, and Tim, maybe if you would like to go over what the additions.
Just, there was one semantical one that we did on the first grid, and then the second page lists out the 18-19 targeted outcomes. So if you're looking at the areas, the percentage of growth, there are some areas that we're looking at collecting baseline data that we put into the document, and so when you see established baseline data, this year we'll be collecting that, and then we'll have a place then for next year for us to look at and figure out, okay, what's an anticipated or expected growth in those areas. But you'll notice that in the 2 columns of teaching and learning and relationships, climate, and culture, where we spend a lot of our time, there are measurable outcomes there for 18-19 in that second page. And then you'll see the different items in the other 3 categories as well. But this is designed around the conversations we've had at the board as strategic plan, and as administration we put together verbiage that we thought would be easier to understand for the community and not so complex or convoluted more than anything in the last one, which was very good. It just, there was a lot to it, and when we talk about definitions, I believe there are 9 pages of the 19 that were definitions. So this hopefully doesn't need that. And so it's a way for us to have something a little bit more simplified and understandable for the public as well as us.
And we had conversations with Brian, and he was okay with the measurables being added into this strategic plan for the school district. We felt it was important to get this solidified before we continue on with our process. We can always refer back to this, and the reason we're doing it is because of the strategic plan. So I would entertain a motion to accept it. Are there any questions prior to that? If there are no questions, I would certainly entertain a motion.
I make a motion to approve the School District of Milton's strategic plan as presented.
Second.
Okay, motion made by Karen, second by Diamond. Any questions? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, pass. And again, Brian had stated to myself that he would be in favor of this action as well. Item C, the 2019-20 Student and Family Handbooks.
Again, this was, they aren't for approval, but these are the handbooks, so you have them, the K-6, the middle school, and then the high school student family handbooks. So they do not need to be approved by board, but we wanted you to have a copy of them so that way if you had any, as you look through them over time, or if you look through them ahead of time, then you can see that there's pretty complex. In essence, there are administrative guidelines for a lot of things that we do, And so we talked about it at policy committee, a lot of the guidelines are embedded into the handbook, and so that the families know what the expectations are, and as far as rights and responsibilities as well. So here's a copy for you. We are put them, they're already out, it's going to be out as well to the families, and so, okay.
Any questions or comments?
We spent some time this spring also making sure that they were all aligned, so that way, when it comes to a lot of the language, obviously there might be some difference in how it's said K-6 versus high school, but the fabric of the roles, responsibilities, rules, et cetera, are similar and the same.
Okay. Thank you. The next item is action on the 2018-19 open enrollment alternative applications.
This is the opportunity for parents to apply for open enrollment after the regular application period, which was February to April. So these are applications from the end of April to date to attend this fall on an open enrollment. Either we have 14 in and 25 out. And just a note for the board, if you ever want to see, I summarize it here, but if you have any other questions, just contact me and I can, if you want to see the actual applications, I can show them to you.
I know the question usually comes up when we have students transferring out, whether or not there's any bullying involved or anything like that. None that you know of in this case?
There actually were a couple in there.
Okay.
Yeah. Nothing of note or concern, but.
I'm assuming it was brought to the attention of the principals for those schools.
And as you can see, the ones that have asterisks, they've never attended Milton. So the vast majority were never our students that were transferring out. Either they had a recent move or they've just moved into the area, haven't attended any here in Milton before, so.
Okay. But my concern is if there were some bullying situations, we want to make sure that those were dealt with.
Yes.
Okay.
They would always be brought to the principal's attention.
Okay. Thank you. Any other questions? I'd entertain a motion to accept the open enrollment. So moved.
Second.
Motion by Don, second by Karen, to accept the open enrollment alternative applications. Any questions? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, so moved. Thank you. Miscellaneous. We have action on staffing report. And it looks like we have 7 letters of employment or contracts and 7 resignations.
I make a motion to accept the staffing report as presented.
I'll second.
Motion made by Karen and seconded by Don to accept the staffing report as presented. Any questions? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, so moved. Action B is action on gifts and donations. Have a total of $850.
I have a question on that. Are the 3-point lines different now, Mr. Hamel, that we're redoing them, or?
We put on the side rooms in the gym.
Oh, okay, you put it aside.
Well,
Okay.
6 baskets will have.
All right, thank you.
I'll make a motion to accept the $850 with gratitude.
Motion made by Mike and seconded by Joe to accept the gifts and donations with gratitude. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, so moved. Thank you. Meeting dates and upcoming board and committee meetings.
The August 23rd is the next strategic planning committee meeting of the whole, and that'll be at the high school. And then August 27th is our next school board meeting. And then we will move change the date on that strategic plan public workshop to the 12th of September. And we'll send that out and publicize that as well.
Okay.
And then our next board after that is September 10th, and that'll be our next policy committee. And any other committee meetings that are needed, we will send out information this week or whenever, as we look at the schedule, make sure whether it's finance or HR, we'll look at dates.
Okay.
For that.
Okay. We looking for one the first week in September, second week in September? Okay. We'll keep some dates in mind. Okay, at this point, accept the motion to go into executive session 19.85, Parent 1, Parent C, considering employment, promotion, compensation, or performance evaluation data of any public employee over which the governmental body has jurisdiction or exercises responsibility, and we'll be talking about 2 administrative contracts.
So moved.
Okay, we have a motion to go into executive session by Karen, second by Joe. We do a roll call vote for this. Simon?
Yes.
Joel?
Yes.
Yes. Karen?
Oh, yes.
Don?
Yes.
Mike? Yes. Okay, we are in executive session. Thank you all for coming.